Hi, Adriana. In your video, you talked about the thinking goals were that he had sabotaged, for her to remember to think that he had sabotaged the relationship, and not to isolate herself. And I think it's important for her to continue to think about the fact that this man had sabotaged the relationship, because she might be thinking that, sometimes when a relationship or something like that ends, you tend to think, well, what did I do wrong? I messed up. It's my fault. I should have been more of this or that. So, in her thinking, it's important for her to continue to think that it was him. He sabotaged their relationship. It wasn't her. And then not to isolate herself, because that's not a healthy behavior for you to just totally isolate yourself from people. And then the do was to continue to go to meetings and then continue to work on forgetting this guy or letting this guy go. You mentioned that he said to her that you'll let him go when you're ready. That you liked the fact that he was on her side. He was encouraging to her. He was not trying to tell her what to do. He was encouraging her goals. She was making the goals. He was encouraging them. And then you talked about DBRCs. I work in a middle school, but we have these also for select kids. And kind of like you said, some of them are for minor things, like, you get up out of your seat too much. And some of them are for more like aggressive behavior. But one of the things, I do think if the DBRCs are worked properly, then they are a good thing. I don't think that they're always worked properly, and I'm only speaking from my experience where I work. Oh, hold on a second. I need to plug in this computer. Yikes. Sorry, if I don't do this, it's going to die. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. So my experience is only from my school. And I'm also on the teacher side of it. Once again, I'm sorry, my house is getting remodeled, so it looks like a hot mess behind me. Yeah, it's bad. So anyways, so I'm only seeing things also from the teacher's perspective. I don't always see what goes on behind the scenes, although I do know some of it. So our DBRCs are just kind of like a basic form that's printed out, and it's kind of the same. I think it's like 1 through 5 also, and then it's just kind of a, generic thing. I think that DBRCs, going along with, what we're learning and the video that we watched, that the kids should create their goals. When you're starting a DBRC with the kids, I think the counselor should sit down with the kid or the child and have the child create the goals. Talk about what are we struggling with in class. Now, what are your goals going to be? And then use the student-created goals on the DBRCs instead of some generic thing that may or may not pertain to them. So ours, it's very, like I said, generic information. So if a kid is struggling with a specific task and that's not listed on that generic DBRC, then it's kind of like it's not productive. So I think the student should create their goals on the DBRC. And then, like you said, it's also very important to have some sort of reflection at the end of the day, or maybe at the end of the week over the week's DBRCs. I don't think that always happens where I work. So I don't know how effective it really is if there's not much of a feedback or reflection. I think they might look over it, and then if there's like really bad comments, then they'll call them in. The principal will call them in to talk about it. But I think that this should be more of a counselor situation. If every day, or even if the counselor at the end of the week reads through all of them and then meets with that kid the next week and talks about what the positives were and the negatives and what their goals were to fix these things, just to encourage the kids, because sometimes if these things aren't getting reflected on, they might think that it doesn't matter. So why am I even trying if nobody's even looking at this? Even though somebody might be looking at it, if you're not reflecting over it with the kids, then they may feel like you're not even looking at it. So I like the idea of DBRCs, kind of like you said. I do think they can work if done properly. It sounds like maybe at your school, you'll have better success with that. But I do think that the goals need to be more child-specific, not generic. And that it's important that the kid creates the goal or has a opportunity to help in creating those goals. So, thanks. See you next week.